This is the Music Halls of Fame podcast. This week we honor the year in music for 1994 along with a member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame class of 1994. We also take a look at who will be eligible for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for the first time next year, plus our Spotlight Hall of Fame is the Canadian Music Hall of Fame and Museum in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Before we get going with the podcast, like everyone tells you, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you'll know when these podcast episodes drop, which is usually every Thursday. Now, on to this week's episode. The year was 1994. In music, 1994 was marked by the death of Kurt Cobain from Nirvana. 1994 was also the year that Michael Jackson married Lisa Marie Presley, the Eagles got back together and hell froze over, Aerosmith became the first major label band to purposely put a free song onto the internet for downloading, and Lisa Left Eye Lopez burned down her boyfriend's mansion. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, who also knows how to use a flame accelerant. Woodstock 94 happened. The three-day festival was televised on MTV and helped to put artists Nine Inch Nails, Green Day, Sheryl Crow, and Melissa Etheridge's careers into overdrive. Bill Wyman left the Rolling Stones. Pink Floyd went on tour for the final time. Pearl Jam went to war with Ticketmaster. Michael Bolton was found guilty of copyright infringement after the court found that his song Love is a Beautiful Thing was a little too close to the Isley Brothers song of the same name. Bryan Adams became the first Western music artist since the end of the Vietnam War to hold a concert in that country. The United States Supreme Court ruled that parodying songs was allowed under the Fair Use Law. The ruling had to do with the Two Live Crew's use of Roy Orbison's song Oh Pretty Woman without getting permission first. The biggest selling song of 1994 was Ace of Base's The Sign. In fact, it was the year of Ace of Base, as the group had 3 of the top 10 biggest selling singles, with the other 2 songs being All That She Wants and Don't Turn Around. Other hits from 1994 included I Swear by All for One, I'll Make Love to You by Boyz II Men, The Power of Love by Celine Dion, Hero by Mariah Carey, Stay by Lisa Loeb, and Breathe Again by Toni Braxton. Despite the success of Ace of Base's album The Sign, the biggest selling album of the year was actually the Lion King soundtrack. 1994 was also the year where a lot of breakthrough and landmark albums were released. Alice in Chains released their EP Jar of Flies, which became the first EP to hit number 1 on the Billboard Top 200 Albums chart. Green Day released their album Dookie. Nine Inch Nails released their album The Downward Spiral. The Offspring released their album Smash, which became the biggest selling independent album of all time. Weezer released their debut album. Oasis released their debut album, Definitely Maybe. The Arctic Monkeys released their debut album, and Jeff Buckley released his groundbreaking album, Grace. Tim McGraw, Boyz II Men, Counting Crows, Stone Temple Pilots, Kenny G, and Mariah Carey also had big selling albums in 1994. In country music, the biggest albums included John Michael Montgomery's Kickin' It Up, Garth Brooks's The Hits, George Strait's Lead On, Tim McGraw's Not a Moment Too Soon, Mary Chapin Carpenter's Stories in the Road, Brooks and Dunn's Waitin' on Sundown, and the big country singles included John Michael Montgomery's I Swear and also his song Be My Baby Tonight, George Strait's The Big One, Tim McGraw's Don't Take the Girl, Clay Walker's Dreaming with My Eyes Open, Travis Tritt's Foolish Pride, Clint Black's A Good Run of Bad Luck, Mark Chestnut's I Just Wanted You to Know, and Shenandoah's If Bubba Can Dance, I Can Too. In hip-hop, there were classic albums like Notorious B.I.G.'s Ready to Die, Nas's Illmatic, Jeru the Damage's The Sun Rises in the East, Pete Rock and CL Smooth's The Main Ingredient, Organized Confusion's Stress the Extinction Agenda, Snoop Dogg's Murder Was the Case, Warren G's Regulate G-Funk Era, Method Man's Tykel, Bone Thugs and Harmony's Creepin' on a Come Up, Gangstar's Hard to Earn, Diggable Planet's Blowout Comb, Scarface's The Diary, Gravedigger's 6 Feet Deep, and Outkast's Southern Playlist Cadillac Music. Some of the popular hip-hop songs were Warren G's Regulate, Coolio's Fantastic Voyage, Heavy D's Nothing But Love, and also Got Me Waiting, Salt and Pepper and En Vogue's What a Man, Snoop Dogg's Gin and Juice, and also Who Am I, Craig Max's Flavor in Your Ear, Tupac's Keep Your Head Up, Bone Thugs and Harmony's Thuggish Ruggish Bone, and the notorious B.I.G.'s Juicy. It Was All a Dream. In dance music, DJ Paul Oakenfold broadcasted his first legendary Goa mix. Mixmag started a trend when they anointed Sasha as the first superstar DJ. The label would be applied to a number of festival headlining DJs after that. The record label Metalhead, started by DJs Chemistry, Storm, and Goldie, helped to put drum and bass onto the genre map. Orbital performed a legendary performance at the Glastonbury Music Festival, which helped to bring EDM to a more mainstream audience. Great Britain passed the Criminal Justice and Public Order Act, which tried to punish rave culture. Ravers responded, of course, by protesting and raving, although they did have one sanctioned rave at Wembley Stadium that drew 10,000 people. Cafe Mambo and the Cream Parties also started in Ibiza in that year. Some of the big dance albums that were popular in 1994 included Massive Attack's Protection, Portishead's Dummy, The Prodigy's Music for the Jilted Generation, which had the hit songs Voodoo People and No Good, and Paul Van Dyk's 45 RPM, which had the influential song For an Angel. Other classic dance tracks that were big that year included Livin' Joy's Dreamer, Reel to Reel's I Like to Move It, 20 Fingers' Short, Short Man, which is also called something else, which I'm not going to repeat here. 2 Unlimited's Let the Beat Control Your Body, Real McCoy's Runaway and Another Night, M People's Moving On Up, Crystal Waters' 100% Pure Love, General Public's I'll Take You There, and Gloria Estefan's Turn the Beat Around. And if you think Eurodance was big in that era, you're not kidding. In Latin music, the biggest artists included Gloria Estefan, Luis Miguel, the Gypsy Kings, Selena, Maña, Branco, Marco Antonio Solis, and Los Buques, La Mafia, Ana Gabriel, and John Cicada. Musicals and revivals of musicals that opened on Broadway included Beauty and the Beast, Carousel, Damn Yankees, Grease, Showboat, and Sunset Boulevard. Musical movies that came out in 1994 included Airheads, Backbeat, Fear of a Black Hat, Immortal Beloved, Hated, Gigi Allen and the Murder Junkies, The Lion King, The Swan Princess, and Thumbelina. Bands who got together in 1994 included 20 Fingers, Basement Jacks, La Bouche, Bowling for Soup, the Derek Trucks Band, Disturbed, Death in Vegas, the Foo Fighters, the Fugees, Gravity Kills, Hoobastank, Method Man and Redman, The Lox, Limp Bizkit, Lucid Nation, Lunatic, Pendulum, Muse, Seven Dust, Sasha and John Digweed, Scarfo, The Rasmus, Republica, Rednecks, Orgy, Orbit, Orange 9mm, Space Hog, The Spice Girls, Sneaker Pimps, Sunvolt, Skunk Anansi, Storyville, System of a Down, Static X, Total, and Tenacious D. Groups who either broke up until, of course, their inevitable reunions or announced a hiatus included Acid Test, Bob's Your Uncle, Nirvana, chiefly because of Kurt Cobain's death, High Five, School of Fish, The Staple Singers, Los Buques, Jellyfish, Con Can, Level 42, Leaders of the New School, DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, Dramarama, Main Source, Uncle Tupelo, Whitesnake, Winger, The Wonder Stuff, New Kids on the Block, Five Blind Boys of Mississippi, and Firehose. Groups who got back together in 1994 included the Circle Jerks, King Crimson, and Hell Froze Over and got the Eagles back together. Artists who were born in 1994 included Justin Bieber, Harry Styles, Bad Bunny, Maluma, Ashton Irwin of 5 Seconds of Summer, Howard Lawrence of Disclosure, DJ Nathan Daw, DJ Madion, Phoebe Bridgers, Kali Uchis, Christina Grimmie, Ava Max, Kai of EXO, RM and J-Hope of BTS, Lynn Gunn of Paris, Halsey, rappers King Von, Dax, Dreezy, and Lil Baby. Artists who passed away, aside from the aforementioned Kurt Cobain, included singer-songwriter Harry Nilsson, composer Henry Mancini, songwriter Jules Stein, entertainers Donald Swan of Flanders and Swan, Martha Raye, and Dinah Shore, guitarist Fred Sonic Smith of MC5, bassist Kristen Flaff of Hole, singers Ephraim Lewis, Garnett Silk, and Dan Hartman, jazz guitarist Eric Gale and Joe Pass, and jazz singers Carmen McRae and Cab Calloway. In awards for the music of 1994, at the Grammy Awards, Sheryl Crow won Best New Artist and Record of the Year for All I Want to Do, while Bruce Springsteen won Song of the Year for Streets of Philadelphia. Tony Bennett's MTV Unplugged won Best Album. At the American Music Awards, Michael Bolton, Mariah Carey, Ace of Base, and the Lion King soundtrack were the big winners. At the Billboard Music Awards, Ace of Base won Artist of the Year. At the MTV Video Music Awards, Video of the Year went to Aerosmith for the song Cryin'. Queen Latifah won Entertainer of the Year at the Soul Train Music Awards. Reba McEntire, Aerosmith, and Garth Brooks won the music categories at the People's Choice Awards. At the Eurovision Singing Contest, which was held that year in Dublin, Ireland, the country of Ireland won on home turf for the song Rock and Roll Kids. Vince Gill won Entertainer of the Year at the Country Music Association Awards, and Reba McEntire won Entertainer of the Year at the Academy of Country Music Awards. Blur won Best British Album for Parklife, and they also won Best Song for Parklife at the Brit Awards. Celine Dion won Best Album for Color of My Love, while Jan Arden won Best Song for Could I Be Your Girl at the Juno Awards. Tina Arena won Album of the Year for Don't Ask, and Silverchair won Single of the Year for Tomorrow at the ARIA Music Awards. At the Tony Awards, Passion won Best Musical. 1994 was the first time that the Tonys gave out an award for Best Revival of a Musical, which was won in 1994 by Carousel. Before then, plays and musicals went up for the same category called Best Revival. The Pulitzer Prize for Music was won by Gunther Schuller for Of Reminiscences and Reflections, Aaron J. Kernis for Still Movement with Him, and Charles Wuorinen for Microsymphony. Musically, at the Academy Awards, the movie The Lion King won both music categories, with Elton John and Tim Rice's Can You Feel the Love Tonight winning Best Song, and Hans Zimmer winning Best Original Score. M People won the Mercury Music Prize for the album Elegant Slumming. The 1994 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony was held on January 19th at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York City. At the ceremony, Bono gave one of the best induction speeches ever for inductee Bob Marley. Paul McCartney hugged Yoko Ono during John Lennon's induction. There was supposed to be a reunion of the group The Band, but some feuds continue to run deep, and the one between band members Robbie Robertson and Levon Helm ran rivers deep at that point. They eventually reconciled a decade later, but that was after 35 years of really not talking to each other. During the rest of the ceremony, band leader, talent scout, and record producer Johnny Otis was inducted into the non-performers category. Willie Dixon was inducted into the early influencers category. And in the performers category, the hall inducted Bob Marley, The Animals, The Band, Duane Eddy, The Grateful Dead, Sir Rod Stewart, John Lennon, and this next artist. Reginald Kenneth Dwight, stage name Elton John, was born March 25, 1947 in Middlesex, England. He started out as a pianist in the local pubs before forming the band Bluesology. After answering an ad placed by an A&R guy from Liberty Records for a songwriter, he was asked to put music to a bunch of lyrics by Bernie Taupin. That began one of the longest songwriting partnerships in music history. Elton's first album was Empty Sky, which didn't do too much. His self-titled follow-up album did much better, spawning the classics Border Song and Your Song. Madman Across the Water and Tumbleweed Connection furthered his ride. From 1969 to 1974, he put out 6 studio albums, a soundtrack, and a live album, a stunning volume of work in only 5 years. He had also begun a streak of #1 albums, Honky Tonk Chateau in 1972 and Don't Shoot Me, I'm Only the Piano Player in the beginning of 1973. Apparently not one to rest on his laurels, he and Bernie decided that they should record their next album in Jamaica. The Rolling Stones had recorded their album Goat's Head Soup in Jamaica, and Elton loved the album. Plus, it's a classic album to this very day. And plus, it's Jamaica. Warm, tropical sun, island breezes, great food, reggae music, friendly people. Hell, my mother's Jamaican. How bad could Jamaica be? Well, as it turns out, kind of bad. For starters, the country was going through some political tensions, as we like to say in Jamaica, as an election the year before had swept Prime Minister Michael Manley to power over a very unpopular incumbent, Prime Minister Hugh Shearer. But the economic conditions were such that violence broke out rather regularly. Add to that, George Foreman and Joe Frazier were having a boxing match on the island at the same time, which created a ton of congestion. And since it's Jamaica and it's an island, a little traffic jam can turn into an island-wide traffic jam in a real big hurry. To go along with all of that, the studio equipment had issues. The only good thing to come out of the Jamaican experience was that Elton and Bernie managed to write all of the songs for the album very quickly, probably because they wanted to get out of there. Bernie took almost 3 weeks to write the lyrics, and Elton took only 3 days to write the music. After this perfect storm of craziness and chaos, the guys decided to get back to Europe to record the actual album. They ended up at the Chateau d'Hérouville in France, which was where they recorded their last 2 albums. The album itself ended up being long, although it wasn't really planned to be that long. It was only supposed to be a single record, but since they recorded 18 songs, they decided to make it a double album. The album was originally called Silent Movies, Talking Pictures, and also Vodka and Tonics, before they finally settled on the actual title, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. It was released on October 5th, 1973. Despite the fact that 6 of the album's songs are considered classic rock staples, at the time it was originally released, only 3 songs were actually released as singles in America. Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting, and Benny and the Jets. Candle in the Wind and Harmony were released in Great Britain. Funeral for a Friend and Love Lies Bleeding wasn't released due to its length of over 11 minutes. The album became the best-selling one of his career with over 8 million certified copies in America alone. It was in the top 10 in 9 different countries and #1 in 4 of them. It was the biggest-selling album of 1974 and is considered by many to be his magnum opus. From there, Elton went on a roll. To date, he has put out 31 studio albums, 4 live albums, 7 soundtrack albums, including his Academy Award-winning work on The Lion King, and has sold over 350 million albums worldwide and counting. Of course, if you've seen his biopic Rocket Man, then you know all about his private life, his drug problems and rehab, his near bankruptcy, etc. But hey, rock and roll. He's still considered to be one of the greatest artists of all time. In fact, even though he has officially retired from touring after over 50 years, he's actually more popular than ever, as his last album, 2021's The Lockdown Sessions, went top 10, and his duet, Cold Heart with Dua Lipa, went to #1, opening up his work to yet another generation of fans. For the record, I don't actually think he's done touring. My prediction is that he'll announce his I'm Not Dead Yet tour by 2026 probably. Elton's Princess Diana version of Candle in the Wind is the biggest selling single of all time worldwide. He's had way too many hit singles to name here from virtually every decade, from Your Song up to Cold Heart and beyond, because I don't actually think he's done yet, which is why I say and beyond. He had 19 top 10 songs in the 1970s, 7 top 10 songs in the 1980s, 4 top 10 songs in the 1990s, none in the 2000s, although he had a few in England during that decade, 1 top 10 song in the 2010s, and 2 so far in this decade. He's won a Tony Award for the Broadway musical Aida, an Academy Award for The Lion King, and 6 Grammy Awards. And if he wins his award category at the upcoming Emmy Awards, he will finally have completed the EGOT, the Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, Tony. He's been knighted by Queen Elizabeth II and has been given similar national awards from the countries of France and the United States. Plus, there's his important work with the Elton John AIDS Foundation. The man is more than a legend. He's an institution. Presented for induction by Axl Rose of 2012 inductees Guns N' Roses, Sir Elton John, inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, class of 1994. And if you want to check out more of his music, I have put it on this week's podcast playlist, which is on YouTube Music, the link to which is in the show notes. Before we go any further, we'd like to tell you that there is now a Music History In-Depth podcast where we go more in depth on a few of the events that happened in music history for that particular week. The Music History In-Depth podcast drops every Tuesday on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast from, as does our Music History Today podcast, which goes over the daily events in music history. The Music History Today podcast drops daily, including weekends, on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Now, back to this podcast. Since this year's class of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has been announced finally, it is not too early to talk about the next class. So let's take a look at who will be eligible for the Hall for the very first time next year. Feel old, kids, because it means that these artists have been around for 25 years already. The list is as follows for first-time eligible nominees. 3 Doors Down, A Perfect Circle, A Touch of Class, better known as ATC, The All-American Rejects, Andrew W.K., Anthony and the Johnsons, The Avett Brothers, Bonobo, Brother Ali, Cannibal Ox, Chris Cagle, Cult of Luna, D12, Dashboard Confessional, The Dotsons, Deadmau5, Davachka, Disturbed, Fozzy, Goldfrapp, Good Charlotte, The Good Life, Gorillaz, Gossip, Hunter Hayes, Interpol, Joe Bonamassa, Joel Hoekstra, John Vanderslice, Josh Ritter, Corellia, Keen, Killswitch Engage, The Knife, Lamb of God, Ladisi, Lifehouse, Linkin Park, Lost Prophets, Madlib, Manitoba, Mark Kozilek, Michael Franti, Michelle Branch, Music Soulchild, Nelly Furtado, The New Pornographers, Nina Nastasia, North Mississippi All-Stars, OK Go, Pete Yorn, Fife Dog, Pink, Prefuge 73, Rascal Flatts, Rat Dog, Raymond, Regina Spektor, Rise Against, Ryan Adams, Sabaton, Sean Paul, Silverstein, Something Corporate, Stars, Sufjan Stevens, Sum 41, Tattoo, Taking Back Sunday, Teddy Thompson, Thrice, Trina, Twilight Singers, Tear, Uncle Cracker, The Vanity Set, The Von Bondies, Ilvis, and 07. Okay, granted, the vast majority of these artists have absolutely zero chance of ever getting in. No offense, Tattoo, but you only really had one hit, much as I loved it back in the day. For you youngins, that's 2002's All the Things She Said. Still, there are at least 20 artists out there who are worth at least taking a look at, since they're popular artists still, and as thinned out as the more obvious artists are due to the temporary decline of pure rock standards lately, they might actually stand a shot. Therefore, we will take a look at the case for a bunch of these artists over a good chunk of the rest of this year. We'll start next week with one artist who probably has the best chance to eventually get in from this upcoming list, Linkin Park. In America, the main lobby group for the recording industry and the one who gives out the Grammy Awards is the Recording Academy. Its Canadian equivalent is the Canadian Academy for the Recording Arts and Sciences, and their version of the Grammys are the Juno Awards. In 1978, the Canadian Academy started inducting groups into the Canadian Music Hall of Fame. The physical hall was opened in 2016 as a part of the National Music Centre on 850 4th Street Southeast in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. The center, which also houses the Canadian Country Hall of Fame, is open normally Wednesday to Sunday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., and unlike the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which normally has 10 or more artists inducted, the Canadian Hall usually only inducts one group into its hall per year. In fact, it's only inducted more than one artist per year 5 times since 1978. 2005 saw the induction of a group whose group and lead singer are considered Canadian national treasures, and also an example of what it means to be Canadian, according to Canadian music critics at least. Founded in Kingston, Ontario, and fronted by Gord Downie, the group had 14 albums which did extremely well in Canada. They sang about subjects that touched upon all things Canadian and differentiated themselves from other Canadian rock artists who wanted a more international following. And for that reason, more than likely, they never really broke through in America. In 2015, Gord Downie found out that he had terminal cancer. In 2016, the band announced that the summer tour would be their final one. The final concert from that tour took place in Kingston, Ontario, and was broadcast nationwide on the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation television channel. That final tour was actually made into a documentary called Long Time Running. In 2017, the band was given one of Canada's highest honors, the Order of Canada. Gord received his early in July of that year, with the rest of the band receiving theirs in November of 2017. Gord Downie passed away on October 17th, 2017. The memory of Gord and the band lives on, as Gord told an interviewer just before he passed on that the band had recorded 4 albums worth of material before he was too weak to continue on. Canada's most quintessentially Canadian band, the Tragically Hip, inducted into the Canadian Music Hall of Fame in 2005, and we will put a sampling of their music onto this week's podcast playlist, much like we did with the Elton John one. The link, of course, will be in the show notes, as will the link to the Canadian Music Hall of Fame. The Music Halls of Fame podcast is part of the Music History Today network, which can be found under Music History Today on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts from, and also on our YouTube page under Music History Today. Thank you very much for listening.